So the infamous Brandon Sanderson has come to us with the evils of the Amazon and all its evil corporate evil thingies and so on and so forth. But there's a double triple twist because it's not Rings of Power, which almost 90% of the grifters have focused on. Nope. This is Amazon doing not Wheel of Time or even Rings of Power and destroying the fandom and Tolkien or whatever, but apparently the Audible controversy. So if you don't know, Audible is a service they provide to get your books narrated by allegedly good voice actors, and apparently it's very huge. I'm totally out of the loop with this thing because for the most part, I stick to the physical copies. Not to be a hypocrite, I do listen occasionally to the audiobook stuff, but the only thing I really listen to is, frankly, The Dark Tower. I've sought out a few other things, but I'm really kind of indifferent. I'm kind of like, okay, audiobooks are for some people, for some other people, doesn't matter. But apparently it is a very big, thriving market, and if you are an author, you really can't afford to ignore it. It is wave of the future, and the terms that Amazon has set, according to Brandon, are pretty unfair. So we're going to hear an excerpt of his editorial, essentially laying out why his books in the future, at least for the foreseeable future, will not be on Audible.
Feel guilty. I have an Audible account and subscription. It's how my dyslexic son reads most of the books he reads. Audible did some great things for books, notably spearheading the audio revolution, which brought audiobooks down to a reasonable price. I like that part a lot. However, they treat authors very poorly, particularly indie authors. The deal Audible demands of them is unconscionable, and I am hoping that providing market forces will encourage change in a positive direction. If you want details, the current industry standard for a digital product is to pay a creator 70% on a sale. It's what Steam pays your average creator for a game sale, it's what Amazon pays on ebooks, it's what Apple pays for app downloads, and they're getting heat for taking as much as they are, rightfully so. Audible pays 40%. Almost half. For a frame of reference, most brick and mortar stores take around 50 on a retail product. Audible pays indie authors less than a bookstore does when a bookstore has storefront, sales staff, and warehousing to deal with. I knew things were bad, which is why I wanted to explore other options with the Kickstarter, but I didn't know how bad. Indeed, if indie authors don't agree to be exclusive to Audible, they get dropped from 40% to a measly 25%. Buying an audiobook through Audible instead of from another site literally costs the author money. Again, I like the people at Audible. I like a lot about Audible. I don't want to go to war, but I do have to call them out. This is shameful behavior.
Well, hard to know what to make of this. I have published things as an author, but in nonfiction. Sometimes I'm paid, sometimes I'm not. For what I'm paid, for what it is, it's fine. This is really about fictional publishing, and that's what Daniel's video concentrated on. There's a lot of particulars about this whole situation. And I do find it funny, however, that the anti-Amazon people like Critical Drinker and these other types, Shadversity or whatever he calls himself, I double checked. They've got their books on Audible. So despite all this yammering about the alleged racism and destroying Tolkien or whatever, they don't care. They're getting their paychecks from Amazon like everyone else. So they don't really care about these things. They're just a bunch of liars and hypocrites. And to be consistent, Brandon admits, yes, he has an Audible subscription. So he's not going full blown, let's attack Amazon or Audible. He says, I like the people at Audible. It's just the way they're doing business with indie authors in particular is creating a lot of problems and crises. Again, I'm hoping to publish soon. I finished off some fictional work, so I'm going to have to be concerned with this sooner or later. And Daniel himself admits it is a choice. It's not really a real monopoly in a business sense. You do have choices, but the choices are so bad that it's kind of like a mafia deal. You're just better off going along with every other person. I am a little shocked that Stephen King and George R.R. Martin are silent on this issue. As far as I know, they have their books on Audible. I double-checked, and so does Frank Herbert, technically, through the Herbert estate. But here it gets a little tricky. I think with Frank Herbert and some of the more established people, including Tolkien, well, they never really got paid what they deserved during their lifetime. So you're kind of stuck in some cases. Even the big authors should probably be kind of excluded from this conversation. Yes, we should all be concerned. 90% of this editorial I have no problem with.
prices on audiobooks, which then makes you even more hesitant to shop around. But please take the time to try these books somewhere else. I've priced them at $15, the current price of a monthly subscription to Audible, at their most common price point. You can get these books with no subscription and no credit.
And people have to make their own decision. Again, from the consumer side, is Amazon even doing anything wrong? I mean, you're getting an affordable book per se. So from the consumer side, they're not doing anything wrong. From a more established author side either, they're doing the right thing of finally getting the rewards where they need to go for the big name authors. But if you're a very small author, this is putting you in a bit of a situation. And King and Martin are usually pretty good. They try to promote new authors, they work with young authors, they seem to have no issue with providing blurbs. So it's a little weird that only Sanderson really is the big one name that's coming out about this. So is it the other big names are scared? Do they like making their money for Amazon? It just feels a little weird. I mean, it could be the case they just don't know how bad it is, but apparently it is really, really bad. Or maybe the alternatives like Kindle or the other sources are good enough for the indie authors that they're not able or don't want to make a big row about this. So it's a little confusing, but again, it is a legitimate issue to bring up. And some people have accused Sanderson of trying to be a celebrity and hog the spotlight. Well, even if that's true, I think it's totally legitimate. And although I do like the Wheel of Time books, some of the fandom has gone a little extreme, and apparently they are really in a rage about Rosamund Pike even narrating the books. Not over this issue, not over authors not being paid or unfair business practice. They just don't want her narrating the books at all. Apparently, there's already some good narrators for the books in another format, and they just like, those books are great, they're fine. She's desecrating things with her voice acting. So I don't know. It's all getting really silly and complicated. Some of this is the normal corporate politics, which should be rectified if you're on the left. But if you're on the right, an extreme right wing capitalist or libertarian, there are those people. You have to be like, well, are they doing anything wrong technically? Monopolies are illegal in the US. So if it is a monopoly, you can just take legal action. So it just seems a very weird kind of consensus where you don't have to do things with Audible, but it just pays to do things with Audible, and nobody wants to buck the trend. In principle, I do support Sanderson, but when we get into the particulars, it's not clear which authors should be supporting him and which authors can remain validly neutral and say, well, this is really before our time. We're not really a part of this controversy. So it's a lot to mull over. I'm just here presenting the information, and I should be concerned because I will publish hopefully soon enough. I'll be totally honest. I'm just like head scratching. I just never really thought about audiobooks in my future. I'm like, okay, some people want to do it. Some people don't want to do it. Some people make a good living from voice acting from doing this. Some people don't. Apparently, it is a genuinely big controversy. So hopefully the fantasy fandom will be discussing this very soon in detail.